Good evening from my side and from the panel as a whole. It is quite late in the day, but we have a very exciting topic now speaking about e-fuels in shipping. And I'm Stefan. I'm from Argus Media. I edit our Hydrogen and Future Fuels report, so we provide data analysis and insights and news stories and longer analysis pieces to really keep our subscribers up to date with everything that's going on in the industry. And we are going to do or take a slightly different approach to some of the previous panels, in that we're not going to do any presentations, but we're just going to have a discussion. And so what I'd like to do is to first just introduce the three excellent panelists that we've got with us today. So starting on the far end from my point of view, we've got Jean-Michel Germain, who is chairman of the SOPA Group and its various subsidiaries. He is, and I'm delighted to say that he really is a pioneer in onshore and offshore wind power. He set up France's very first wind turbine back in 1991, so that's over 30 years ago. And he's also a pioneer over here. He actually developed Morocco's first 2 wind farms. And now through SOPA's subsidiary MGH Energy Maroc, he is involved in the development of a large-scale e-fuel project, or multiple large-scale e-fuel projects that I'm sure he will talk to us about. And those are particularly focused on maritime transport industry, targeting Moroccan and global markets. And then next to him, we've got Jose Miguel Zaldo. He is senior advisor at Blackstone. And I'm delighted to say that he's also somewhat of a pioneer, although maybe not quite so much in the wind industry, but he first came to Morocco a long time ago with a textile company. And then as president of the Morocco-Spain committee, he brought several, actually hundreds of companies to Morocco, helped them get a start here. And now in his capacity at Blackstone, which is obviously a global investment firm, he is working with several partners focusing on Morocco, and among them is also Fisterra. And Fisterra and Blackstone are planning to produce green hydrogen and ammonia in Morocco. And I'm sure he will also tell us more about that. And then last but not least, we've got Ali Zerali, who is Chief Development Officer for the Middle East and Africa region at HIF Global, which is a company focusing on e-methanol and e-fuel production globally. He previously was Executive Director for Cooperation and International Development at Marston here in Morocco, and he has a long list of other appointments, including being Vice President of the Africa Commission at the General Confederation of Moroccan Enterprises. He is President of Green H2's International Commission, and he is also part of the Council of Engineers on the Energy Transition, which is an independent advisory council to the UN's Secretary General. So now you've got a bit of the laydown on who we've got up here, and you'll probably agree that we've got a lot of great experts and a lot of great expertise up here. So let's start. And Jean-Michel, could you maybe just for us, just set the scene a little bit? Why are we here talking about e-fuels in the shipping industry? Why is this a topic? Why do we need them? And where do we want to be? And how can e-fuels help us get there?
Thank you, Stefan, and good afternoon to all of you. The shipping industry is an interesting industry because it has been laid back in the Protocol Kyoto in 1997, and nothing has been done to reduce CO2 emission, or nothing, but a few, in such a way that today it's at the root of the wall, I would say. They need to move forward, and it's an activity that in the world consume 250 million of ton equivalent of oil every year, and it needs to be decarbonized. For that, we get a lot of ways to do, but there is a large international consensus that is synthetic fuels will more or less represent 70% of the levers to decarbonize this activity. Well, let's start with that.
Thank you. And then maybe just broadening the scope, Ali, because I know that at HIF you're also looking at other industries. So maybe also just as a bit of an intro, what is then the beauty of e-fuels in particular? Why are they such a good solution for decarbonizing, actually not just the shipping industry, but other industries as well?
So we are all talking about energy transition, but if you dig into the details for the transport, so basically you have the common transport that you could electrify, but you have a much more transport that you couldn't electrify. If you look at aviation or shipping industry, they are both respectively contributing to 2.5 to 3% of global CO2 emission. Then the only way to decarbonize that is to move from fossil fuels to renewable hydrocarbons, meaning that from renewable energy, we will produce green hydrogen, blend it with CO2, and go through the e-methanol route to produce e-methanol. And then from there, you can go to SAF, you can go to olefins, you can go to the plastic industry, you can go in many heavy industries, which are petrochemical industries. So there is a huge opportunity to accelerate the decarbonization by accelerating the deployment of what we call renewable hydrocarbons.
And everybody likes to hear about concrete projects. Can you just fill us in a little bit on what are kind of the HIS flagship projects, and do you have any that you maybe already want to talk about in the MENA region in particular, or what are you looking at over here?
So at IAF Global, we are not yet present in the MENA region. So they hired me now to extend our footprint in the MENA region. So the most advanced project that we have is the Matagorda project, which is the second biggest project relating to green hydrogen in the world. It's 1.8 gigawatts of electrolyzer. We are finalizing the FEED. We are already paying the reservation fees to Siemens, capturing half of their global capacity for electrolyzers. And we are targeting the FEED by early next year. In parallel, we are developing a project. So we are also in the FEED in Chile for a smaller scale project, which is 240 megawatts of electrolysis. And we are also in the pre-FEED in Uruguay and Australia. So we have many streams in parallel, and we are quite confident to achieve the first FID for the Chilean project and the US project by next year. And now we are looking to the MENA region because as we want to be a global player, we need to focus also on the European market. And what else than Morocco, Mauritania, and the MENA region to address in a very competitive way the European market. However, we need to be very careful because we think that the European legislation is hindering the development of renewable hydrocarbons in the MENA region to be exported in this market. They are putting in place so complex carbon pricing mechanism with the delegated Act Article 28. It's a global hinder which is not acceptable, but it is what it is, and we need to deal with it, and we need to push the European legislation to unlock the development of such projects in the region to be exported in the European market.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I'd like to come back to that maybe a bit later. Also, now coming to you, Jose Miguel, and I mentioned that people do like to hear about concrete projects. Can you just also fill us in on what exactly it is that Festera is pursuing specifically over here in Morocco?
We are absolutely sure that the definitive solution for decarbonizing the shipping will be the Efuels, because you can use all the infrastructure, the engines, and everything. No? But we are sure that it's not coming very soon. Then anyway, even though we have decided here in Morocco to produce the equivalent of 1 gigawatt of hydrogen, because we have already others. not in shipping. We have already orders for fertilizers and for some companies in hydrogen. Why? Because they understand that the clients will appreciate it, and others because they are having very good, high profits, and I decided to sacrifice some of the profits short term to use hydrogen. Then we have others, and I don't know if everybody knows that Fisterra is owned 100% by Blackstone Group. Blackstone is the capital risk, the biggest capital risk fund in the world. We are now moving more or less $1 trillion. And then we want to do many projects in Morocco. We want to start myself. I have done a lot of projects in Morocco for the years, but this one will be very transforming project, because we want to start by the 1 gigawatt. We want to invest $5,000 million to start, because we want to continue, because in our opinion, as soon as we start supplying to our few clients by the moment, hydrogen, the demand will explode. We assure we have to be ready for exploding big market of hydrogen. Initially, fertilizers, of some companies that want to distinguish in the market. And then because we are, besides Morocco, we are already developing 2.6 gigawatts of hydrogen in Europe and in Latin America.
So how advanced are these projects? Are they already kind of at feed stage, or even further than that? Or
they are already FID project already. We are already studying, developing, but we want to start in few years. That depends on the market, but we want, very important for us, to be ready, to be prepared. Because, hydrogen is not something you can say, I start. No. You have to study the wind, you have to study the solar, we have to study all the investment, we have to do things very well, because probably everybody knows that to deploy the hydrogen, the most important point now is the cost.
But are you looking specifically also at the shipping industry as a potential off-taker, or?
No. We are our project is initially, as I told, is not for shipping. We have agreements with the most important ports, but we don't think that will be the first area to be deployed before, and shipping has another things to go on.
Understood. But Jean-Michel, if I understand correctly, your projects are very much geared towards the shipping sector, or you at least see the shipping sector as potentially one of the early adopters for hydrogen-based e-fuels. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Our projects are dedicated to produce e-methanol and SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, both. Because when you produce SAF, you also produce other components, byproducts. We are currently developing projects in South America, in the States, and in Europe, and one in Morocco, which is lying in the queue of the Moroccan offer for hydrogen.
And are you sharing Ali's concerns about, for instance, selling output from Moroccan facilities to Europe? And I mean, quite clearly, just purely given the location, Europe would be the designated off-taker, I suppose. But are you sharing the concerns around, the fairly strict regulations? Is that making it more complicated to plan projects, whether that's for shipping or other off-takers?
Not at all. I believe that the track is perfectly known by everybody since the publication to the official journal of the European Union of the Fuel EU maritime regulation and the ETS extension to the fleet, the boat that come and sail in the European waters. Now it's very clear. We know that between 2025 and 2030, any ship that would sail in the international European waters will be entitled to decrease by 2% its emissions and then its energy consumption. 2% of decrease represent 1.6 million of ton of e-methanol, for instance. And that's a market which is just next door to Morocco. So it's a very well known way of doing things in the ship industry, is that you fix the regulation well in advance for everybody to know where is the road, where to go, and in such a way that the investments will be performed in due time for being ready to implement the regulation. I'm not scared of anything about that.
And you think whatever regulation has come out so far is suitable for where we want to be with the shipping sector going forward? Because there have also been, of course, other voices saying, you know, it's not maybe not comprehensive enough, doesn't go far enough. But you're of the opinion that we're kind of on the right track when it comes to, you know, regulating emissions from the maritime industry.
Yes, I think it's all right. Now everybody knows the track. I talked about the European regulations, but the International Maritime Organization has its own strategy, and it made a decision in the 7th of July of this very year, stating that by 2050 we go to net zero for the international shipping fleet. So everything is paved now. The way is paved, and we just have to align our investments. I'm sure you're going to ask the question about the cost of these, but even that we will afford. I don't foresee any problem. Just a matter of keeping the rhythm, and then an investment and the e-methanol will be ready in due time to comply with the regulations.
Understood. And maybe coming back to you, Ali, if you just want to expand a bit on your thoughts.
So I'm sorry, but I do not agree at all with my friend completely. IMO, indeed, they met in July and they agreed about a target, but they agreed to work towards agreeing for a regulation. So no regulation has been set for the maritimes. And when you look at all the orders of shipping, of ships, you see that more than 90% of the ships that are being ordered now are dual engine, e-methanol and heavy fuels. And if you want to fuel the ships with eligible e-methanol, it needs to be RFNBO. And what does it mean, RFNBO? RFNBO means that you need eligible CO2. And then if you dig into the details, eligible CO2 coming from gas processing, it's eligible until 2035. When it's coming from industrial process like cement industry, it's eligible until 2041. But this is the real nightmare, is that Europe is saying, if we have a cement industry in a European country, then you can get the CO2 from the cement industry, put it in the bottle with the hydrogen and get the e-methanol, which will be RFNBO. But if you just take the same cement industry with the same mix of energy that is used and to translate it to Morocco, then if you take the CO2 from this same industry, cement industry, is not eligible, is not considered as RFNBO, and you can't fuel the ships with it to Europe. And if you do that, you will pay the carbon tax. This is the situation. And because it's our core business to work on the e-methanol route, so we were obliged to seek for all the sources of CO2 that are eligible regarding the European legislation to be able to develop e-methanol that is RFNBO in Morocco and in the MENA region. The thing is that because it's our core business, we are able to do that, but not on a large scale, because CO2 is not that available. And if you look at the biogenic CO2, when you have sun and solar and wind, you do not have biomass. It's obvious. So if you have a lot of biomass, you don't have wind and sun. So Earth, it is what it is. Then when you look at the biogenic CO2 in our region, there is not a lot of sources of biogenic CO2. So it means we have identified several sources of CO2. We are trying to secure the sources of CO2 in order to be able to produce the right product that is eligible for Europe and that could be off-taken in Europe. But the reality is that we can do that for the first hundreds of megawatts or gigawatts projects in the region, but we cannot do it for 20 gigawatt or 30 gigawatt because based on the European legislation, it's not possible. So if Europe is not taking that into account and reviewing that's the pricing, the carbon pricing mechanism that needs to be effective according to them, it's something that is not possible in this region. And they are touching also the sovereignty of the countries, because you cannot come to a country and say you need to put in place this kind of carbon mechanism because it's part of the country's sovereignty. The targets of each country has been submitted to UN, and it's part of the global net zero carbon targets for each country. So to have another market that is bringing additional legislation that is hindering the development of low carbon industry in the countries is not something logical. And we are trying to do a big lobbying toward the European Commission in order to be aware of the legislation that they are putting in place and the hinder that it brings to the development of renewable energy and or renewable hydrocarbons in the market. So we have been able to identify and secure parts of the CO2, but for large-scale projects, when you are talking about 10, 20 gigawatts, it is what it is. It's not available. So I'm sorry, but I'm not completely in line with you.
Well, I don't share your concerns about carbon because we're not here for producing RFNBOs. We're here for decarbonized shipping activity. And if carbon is not costly enough, or if the regulation is not strong enough to put the ship in the right direction, I'm certain that they would change the law, the cost of carbon and everything for the decarbonization of shipping activity going in the right direction. At the end of the day, this is what will happen. This is why I'm not very concerned. But there is a lot to do, a lot of work to do, that's for sure.
Okay, some diverging views, which I think is always good on a panel, and that's what we're here for ultimately. Jose Miguel, I'd be interested to hear. I mean, you're obviously not really kind of targeting kind of the e-methanol route necessarily quite so much. What are your key concerns? And obviously, we've spoken a lot about kind of Morocco's promise in general, of the promise of similar countries as well. If you had to name your number one concern that really needs to be sorted out for actually realizing those projects, what would that be?
Oh, now our main concern is that I know very well Morocco. Right? I am working in Morocco since 33 years ago, and normally Morocco makes the correct decision, but not always. Not always. Our main concern now is time and cost, because we absolutely agree that Morocco has to have high value for this investment, but not directly, indirectly. There are so many. We have already discussed with the president of the region where we want to invest, physical means. And we can do so many things in parallel, but not affecting, never affecting the cost of the hydrogen, because being key factor for the competitiveness will be a mistake to affect the cost. In our case, and our case also time is important because we have clients. I understand that not for everybody time is important. But for us, yes. The client, we can show the contrast. Then it's not theoretical, it's real clients. Then these are our main concerns. I am pretty sure that Morocco is making the correct decision. I'm not sure, because nobody knows exactly what will be the roadmap, you know? Do you know? Let us know, please. And yes, I listen a lot, but okay, it seems that they are making the correct decision. And then that if we do this investment fast, and then the cost is as low as we expect, we have to confirm cost. We will make a lot of very important things in Morocco, in water, in health, in training, in agriculture, so many sectors. We agree to sign an agreement for that. I don't mean, you promise. No. We can sign an agreement that we do that, but we will do that. This is our position.
Understood. I am a bit conscious of time. I would like to give the audience I could ask you 30 more questions if we had more time, but I would like to ask the audience if they have any questions that they would like to ask the panelists. Clearly some very interesting thoughts being presented here. So if anyone would like to ask a question, please feel free. If that is not the case, I think we do have a couple of minutes left on the clock. So I think what I'd like to do, just to conclude, and as I said, we could probably go on speaking about this for a very long time, but I think just like to ask you to very briefly, if you had to kind of say where you'd like to be, say 3 or 4 years down the line, if you could maybe just answer that question, having projects up.
Allow the markets to develop and to become competitive. But also, as for Morocco, Morocco is a captive market for Europe. We are not competitive to sell green hydrogen derivatives in the US or South America. And we are not competitive to do that in East Asia, where these two regions are requesting low carbon hydrogen and renewable hydrocarbon. Europe is requesting RFNBO, even for the ships that are going to Europe, which is different. So I would like also to see that the legislation is evolving in order to unlock the development of this kind of capacities in the closest countries like Morocco and Mauritania.
That's very interesting. So the burden is also very much on the government, not just in Morocco, but elsewhere as well, to really kind of set the scene and make this possible.
I agree with you, then I am not going to repeat. Yes, adding that, I see Morocco as one of the main hubs of hydrogen, not only hydrogen, derivatives of hydrogen, Efuels, why not, methanol, ammonia, all the derivatives, and also that decision to become Morocco, very important decision to continue being the leader in Africa, because our intention is to go with Moroccan people to the rest of African countries, because for us, Africa is the future. And this, our investment in Africa, goes through Morocco with Moroccan people. For us, it's very clear. This is my vision, and I am sure will be a reality in a few years.
Wonderful, thank you.
If I had a wish to do, I would say that what is very important for the development of sustainable fuels in the shipping industry in Morocco and elsewhere, it's the same, is that the shipping industry understands how the renewable energy industry works, which is quite different. In the shipping industry, you buy fuel at spot price, or sometimes with a cover, it's a sort of a long-term cover, which is not at all the case in the renewable energy industry. You know that in a liter of renewable fuels and sustainable fuels, 70% of the cost is the cost of electricity you need to produce the hydrogen and to capture the carbon and then to synthesize the molecule. 70%. It means that 70% of the cost depends on the way you produce your electricity. If you want a renewable fuel, you need wind or sun to be a renewable fuel. And then in our industry, in the wind and in the sun industry, we amortize on the long term the debt of the investment, the capex. And this means that when you trade, when you sell your product, which is RFNBO, when you sell it to a shipping company, an owner, you need to make sure that the investment you made is still operational for 15 years, 17 years at least. And this is quite different than the way the shipping industry work. And we need to make understanding in the shipping industry how we work in the renewable energy.
That's, I think that's a very, very interesting and very good thought to finish off with. And I think it was a very engaging panel. As I said, I think we could go on for quite a long time, but I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. So could you please just give a round of applause to all the great panelists? And thanks to all of you for joining us up here.